Okay, so this is the hoop that I use on a stand, and you can see that the outside ring is not bound and the inner ring is bound. So what that is that I have just covered the outside with bias binding that I've folded out flat, because that's nice and thin, but because it's got the bias edge, it's not going to fray. And I've just wrapped the hoop in that. Now, the reason why I've done that, and why a lot of people who are stitching with a hoop do that, is because it helps to just cushion your fabric between. It gives it a little bit more grip, and it just helps to protect the fabric against the wood. There's no reason to do the outside, because if you do the outside as well, you actually start taking up too much of the room between the two rings, so that you're leaving less room to actually fill up with embroidery. If you've ever used a hoop that someone's bound with a very thick, say twill tape, you'll know what I mean. So that's why I use really thin polycotton bias binding that's folded out flat. And I've just sewn the ends there with a couple of stitches to stop that from unraveling. It does go right around that bit there. Now, my little hoop that I use, I haven't bound, and that's because generally when I'm using this, I'm only using it for very short periods of time for small things, such things that aren't very important. This is what I do my important embroidery in that I want to look really good. This is what I use for my less important embroidery that I just sort of take with me if I'm out somewhere or something like that. Now what I've got here is a little mark on the inside of the hoop there, which aligns with the opening part of the outside hoop where the screw is to do and undo the hoop, to loosen it off and tighten it. Now the reason why that is because I want to be able to match that to there all the time. It's really easy with this because I match that part to there. And what you'll find with some hoops particularly is that when you don't have them aligned, they don't match up quite so well. You might get gaps in between because wood, it does not grow in circles like this. It's bent to form this shape, and so it's actually bent generally in a way that it matches up particularly in one place over another, and that is in this case like this. Now I do sell some other hoops, and these ones included, that on one side they're rounded. This one is not rounded. So this is this one here. It's not rounded on both sides, it's flat on both sides. But the deeper ones tend to be, when you've got a good quality one, rounded on one side and flat on the other. So that also helps you to be able to match it up so that you don't put it together, say, upside down. So you could do it either this way or this way. Actually, I think that's probably the way that's supposed to go because that matches up the best. So when I'm putting my fabric in a hoop, I want to try and get that as close to there, aligning with that as I possibly can, right? Now, if I was stitching like this and I've got threads that are already here, as I do, I would want to actually make sure that they don't get caught between the two rings of the hoop. So I've got it so that that is furthest away from me, which will help me to get things aligned. And then I've got my hoop here like this. So I put it where I want it to be on the hoop, and then I slide this over the top. And hopefully, as I do that, it will be nice and straight in the frame. And it is pretty straight, so I can see that the one lot of threads are going nice and straight that way and another going nice and straight that way. And I'm going to tighten this up. Now, there is a little screw thread or a little screw slot, a screwdriver slot here that you can put your screwdriver in and get it nice and tight. I haven't got a screwdriver with me at the moment, but you can see that as I start to pull this, it's getting tighter and tighter, and that's what I want. But what I don't want is, as I do this, to pull so that it goes really skew-if. That is not going to help you at all. You want to tighten it in such a way that your threads remain nice and straight across the hoop. So you can just keep pulling. Now, if they don't pull and stay, you haven't tightened your screw enough. So you need to keep tightening until it does stay where you want it to. So I'm tightening across at the moment, but I also can tighten down and up as well, so that the whole thing is really nice and drum tight. Don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear a drum sound on that. And that's how I like my fabric to be, because if I'm stitching, I want to be able to stitch. Hang on, I'll just start over here and come out and go over here. So this is just me parking my thread in a really temporary manner. If I'm going to be doing diagonal satin stitch, say like this, then I want to be able to pull that nice and tight, well not too tight, but I want to have a good tension on it without accidentally pulling it in too tight so that it puckers. And that's a real danger when you're doing stitches like this, that you could accidentally make it too tight, which is what I don't want to do. So when I know that my threads of the fabric are nice and straight, they're parallel in this direction, and they're also perpendicular in this direction, so I don't want, hang on, I'll slacken this off and I'll show you what I really don't want as well. I don't want that sort of thing happening where it's pulled so that the threads they're not square anymore, they're more of a parallelogram or a rhombus, I think that's another word for that, so that they're angled. So rather than being at 90 degrees, they're much more angled. And if you stitch like that on a diagonal, for these ones that go that way, their threads will be elongated, and for these ones they'll be shortened. And so when you take it out of the hoop, it's never going to sit flat, it will automatically pucker. So what we want is, we want it nice and flat, we want our threads to be at right angles to each other, so the ones this way and that way are right angles or perpendicular to each other, and then we know that we're going to be getting a good result with our stitching. Now as you stitch, sometimes the whole thing can slacken off. So when you notice that's happened, tighten it up again. Give a little pull like this, tighten your screw up again, because sometimes they can just slacken off, and then keep stitching again. Don't just accept, oh, it's gone slack, I'll just keep going. Tighten it up and then keep going, because you'll get a much better result if the hoop fabric is really nice and tight. So you can do a similar sort of thing with a hoop like this. Let me just move back and I'll show you on the desk. So I've got another piece of fabric here and my smaller hoop, and so if I was using it in this, then I try to get my line that I've marked. You can hopefully see that there. I'll put that right away from me, and then I'll put the screw part up at the top, so hopefully they align as nicely as I possibly can. I'll tighten it up a bit, and then I will just start tensioning my fabric in there like that. So what I want to make sure is that I'm not pulling in any one particular place too much and getting the threads going skewed. I want them to be nice and straight that way and nice and straight that way. And once you've got it looking pretty much the way you want it, tighten that again, and hopefully you'll have a screw thread there. If you've got a good quality hoop, you should have, sorry, not a screw thread, you'll have a screwdriver slot, and you'll be able to tighten it nice and tight. I haven't got one with me at the moment, and that will mean that your fabric is as tight and taut and stable as you can possibly make it, and that will give you a really good result for your stitching. If it slackens off, tighten it up again, but don't use it in a hoop like this. What is the point of that? The only benefit you're getting from that is that you can see more of it flat than if you were stitching in hand like this. There is no point in having a fabric like that. Tighten it up, and then you'll get the full benefit of your hoop. And you can see that I slackened it off then, but now I'm just tightening it up, and it goes back to the way it was. It takes a little while to get it nice and right, but do that. It's worth it for your stitching to make the effort, to have it mounted in your hoop really well.